At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
One of the most salient features of our culture is that there is so much bullshit. Everyone knows this. Each of us contributes his share, but we tend to take the situation for granted.
That is. Wow. It feels less like philosophy and more like, a direct transcript of my Tuesday morning.
Right. It's so real. That's Harry Frankfurt, and he literally wrote the book on this. It's the perfect hook for what we're doing today.
It really is.
We are diving deep into a phenomenon that is, I think, equal parts hilarious and just soul-crushing. Organizational bullshit.
It's the elephant in the boardroom, for sure.
It is. We're unpacking this really heavy-hitting article by Jonathan H. Westover, The Hidden Tax. And I know when you hear organizational bullshit, you probably think of, like, Dilbert comics or something.
For The Office.
Yeah,
exactly.
It feels like a joke. But our mission here today is to convince you that this is actually a serious, quantifiable threat to your company and, frankly, to your own sanity.
Absolutely. I mean, Westover's core argument is that we treat it like a nuisance, like bad coffee in the break room.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a systemic failure.
A failure that costs real money.
A ton. It destroys productivity, it burns out your best people, and it leads to absolutely catastrophic decisions. It's a tax you are paying every single day, whether you realize it or not.
Okay, so let's break this down. We need to figure out what this stuff actually is like, scientifically why it happens, and then get to the fun part, the bullshit slayers.
Right.
We're talking NASA, Netflix, Amazon, how they've engineered systems to kill this stuff before it can spread.
Yeah.
But first, we really need to get our definition straight.
Yes.
You mentioned Frankfurt. He makes this really crucial distinction between a liar and a bullshitter.
He does, and it is so important to get this right. Most people think they're the same thing, but the psychology is completely different. A liar knows the truth. They have the facts right here in their head, and they are actively choosing to misrepresent them. They're actually paying close attention to the truth, if only to hide it.
So the liar is at least, tethered to reality. They know where the line is.
Exactly. But the bullshitter doesn't care at all. They are completely indifferent to the truth.
They're not trying to hide it. They're just ignoring it.
Ignoring it entirely. Their goal isn't to deceive you about a specific fact. It's to impress you, or to fill an awkward silence, or to sell some vague vision. They are just making it up as they go along, whatever serves their purpose in that exact moment.
That feels, almost more dangerous.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. Because the liar is limited by the truth. The bullshitter has, total creative freedom. If reality doesn't matter, you can say anything. And in a corporate setting, that indifference is what lets a bad strategy survive for years.
Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like in the wild. Because I think most of us have that, I know it when I see it, relationship with bullshit. But the research actually breaks it down.
It does. And the most obvious one is the language. I mean, we all know the jargon.
Oh, yeah. Blue sky thinking, low-hanging fruit.
Circling back, drinking the Kool-Aid.
I have a visceral reaction to synergistic alignment. It sounds like something that requires a chiropractor, not a meeting.
Right. And look, the problem isn't the words themselves. It's what they hide. We use jargon to signal that we're part of the tribe, or to sound authoritative when we actually have nothing of substance to say. It's filler.
But it goes beyond just words. Westover points out that visuals are a huge part of this.
The complexity defense, yes.
You mean those charts that look like a plate of spaghetti?
That's the one. You put up a diagram so complicated that nobody can possibly understand it, let alone question it. And it creates this illusion of competence.
Right. You think, wow, that looks so smart. They must know what they're doing.
When often the chart is just hiding the fact that there is no real plan.
And then there are the jobs themselves. We have to touch on David Graeber's concept of bullshit jobs.
This one is painful for a lot of people. Graeber identified these roles where the title is just wildly impressive, like Strategic Vice President of West Coast Brand Integration.
Sounds important.
It does, but the actual day-to-day work is either non-existent or purely ceremonial.
It's the corporate equivalent of a royal guard standing outside a palace that's been empty for 50 years.
Pretty much. And can you imagine the psychological toll of that? Waking up every day to go to a job where, deep down, that if you just didn't show up, nothing would change. That is organizational bullshit in its purest form.
There's actually a tool to measure this, right? The Organizational Bullshit Perception Scale,
Yes.
which, frankly, sounds like something I want to print out and just slide across the table at my next performance review.
I'd use it with caution. Yeah. But yeah, Ferrer and his colleagues developed it. It breaks bullshit perception into 3 dimensions. First is regard for truth. Does your organization actually care about evidence? Or do feelings and, seniority win arguments?
Got it.
Second is the boss. Is leadership communicating to clarify reality, or are they just spinning narratives to advance their own agenda? And third is bullshit language. Is the internal dictionary used to explain things or to confuse people?
I feel like everyone listening right now is mentally scoring their workplace. 0 for truth, 10 for jargon.
It's a very common profile, but before we get too judgmental, we have to look at the why. Because the research is pretty clear on this. This isn't just about bad people or clueless bosses.
It's the system.
It's the system. There are structural pressures that force otherwise honest people to start shoveling this stuff.
So what turns a normal person into a bullshitter?
One of the biggest drivers is something called the expectation to opine.
The pressure to always have an opinion.
Exactly. Just picture a high-stakes meeting. The CEO turns to you and asks, so what's your take on the geopolitical risk in our supply chain for Q4? And maybe you haven't looked at that data. The honest answer is, I don't know, let me get back to you. But in so many corporate cultures, I don't know, sounds like I'm incompetent.
Silence is dangerous. So
yeah.
You start riffing.
You say something like, well, the geopolitical headwinds are certainly a factor we need to monitor regarding our vertical integration strategies. You are saying words. They sound smart. But you are bullshitting because the system punished you for silence.
It's a survival mechanism.
It is, 100%. And status plays a huge role here, too. The higher up you go, the worse it often gets. Leaders feel this immense pressure to be omniscient.
To know everything.
Right. If you're the VP, you are supposed to know. So overconfidence kicks in. You start believing your own hype, and you stop checking the facts.
And it also matters who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Right? If I think you don't know what you're talking about, I'm more likely to try and get one past you.
That's the low accountability factor. If I know nobody in the room has the expertise to fact-check me, or maybe the culture is just so polite that nobody will fact-check me, then bullshitting is just the path of least resistance.
Why do the hard work of research if I can just wing it?
Nobody will stop me. And of course, size matters. The research shows a clear correlation.
Bigger companies, more BS.
Unfortunately, yes. Bureaucracy is a breeding ground for it. When you have 12 layers of management, it is just so easy for the truth to get lost in the elevator between the ground floor and the C-suite.
Okay, so we know what it is, we know why we do it, but I really want to push on the consequences. The title is The Hidden Tax. That implies a real cost. What are we actually paying?
The single most expensive line item is decision quality. This is from Spicer's research. If your organization runs on bullshit, if the inputs for your strategy meetings are just feel-good data or gut feelings disguised as facts,
And then the outputs are going to be garbage.
complete garbage. You are building a massive, expensive strategy on a foundation of sand.
And when the tide comes in.
The whole thing collapses. But there's a more human cost, too. The tax on talent. Westover talks about the cognitive labor involved.
Unpack that a bit. What is that?
Just think about the mental energy you spend trying to decode a vague email from your boss, or the time you waste in a meeting trying to figure out if your project manager is actually saying the project is on track, or if they're just using 50 words to say they haven't started.
It's exhausting. It's like trying to read a map that just keeps changing.
Precisely. It burns through your cognitive battery. Instead of solving problems or being creative, your brain power is just wasted trying to figure out what is real. And that leads to ethical dissonance.
Which is just a fancy way of saying feeling gross about your job.
It really is. It's the stress of pretending. If you value honesty, but your job requires you to nod along to a strategy you know is complete nonsense, that creates this internal conflict. And the research says people usually react in one of 4 ways.
Okay.
Exit, voice, loyalty, or neglect.
Exit is obvious. You quit. Voice is speaking up.
Which is really risky.
Right. But loyalty and neglect are the interesting ones.
Loyalty in this context is actually kind of tragic. It means you embrace the bullshit, you become a carrier, you start using the jargon, you start spinning the narratives because that's how you get promoted in that system. You assimilate.
And neglect.
Neglect is just quiet quitting. You check out, you stop caring if the strategy works, you start trying to fix things, you do the bare minimum to get the paycheck, and you go home. And that is the death knell for innovation.
And it kills trust. Once you see your boss as a bullshitter, you can't unsee it.
You really can't. Once that boss dimension on the scale goes red, once you realize they are indifferent to reality, they lose all ability to lead. Even if they tell the truth later, you won't believe them. The credit is gone.
Okay, that is sufficiently depressing. We have diagnosed the disease. Now I want the cure.
Yes.
The article outlines these tactical interventions. How do we actually fight this? Because it feels a bit like fighting gravity.
It's hard, but it's possible. And the first strategy is transparency and evidence. The gold standard here, and, love them or hate them, is Bridgewater Associates.
Ray Dalio's hedge fund. They're
Right.
famous for being intense.
Intense is putting it mildly. They practice what they call radical transparency. So in most companies, you hide your mistakes. At Bridgewater, if you make a mistake, it's put up on an iPad for everyone to see.
Wow.
But the key mechanism is evidence-based disagreement.
So you can't just walk in and say, hey, I think this stock's going to go up.
Nope, not a chance. You have to show your work. And more importantly, they use believability-weighted decision-making. Your opinion only counts as much as your track record proves it should.
So if you have a history of being wrong about tech stocks,
Then your opinion on Apple means way less than the junior analyst who's been right 10 times in a row.
that sounds brutal, but it effectively weaponizes the truth against bullshit. You can't just charm your way through that meeting.
Exactly. It forces you to bring receipts. Now, not everyone can be Bridgewater, but you can adopt the principle. Make evidence the price of admission for having an opinion.
Another strategy is procedural justice. This is where NASA comes in.
And this is a heavy one. We all know the history of the Challenger and Columbia disasters. In both cases, there were engineers who knew there was a problem.
They knew.
They knew the O-rings were brittle, they knew the foam strike was dangerous, but the management structure suppressed that information. The bullshit was the official narrative that everything is fine, we have a schedule to keep.
So how did they fix it?
They realized they couldn't just tell people to speak up.
Yeah.
That's not enough. They had to build a bypass. They established independent safety panels and these escalation channels that went outside the normal chain of command.
So if my boss tells me to shut up about a safety risk, I have a red phone I can pick up that goes over his head.
Essentially, yes. And the Cleveland Clinic does this too. They have speak-up programs where a janitor can literally stop a surgery if they see a safety violation. The mechanism here is lowering the cost of dissent. You have to make it safer to tell the truth than it is to stay silent.
That's the key. If truth is dangerous, you get bullshit. If truth is safe, you get reality.
Right. And sometimes the problem isn't fear, it's just a lack of skill. We have to talk about critical thinking.
This is the McKinsey and the U.S. intelligence angle.
Yeah. Sometimes people bullshit simply because they don't know how to properly analyze a problem. McKinsey drills their consultants in the MECE framework. Mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive.
Sounds complicated.
It's just a rigorous way of breaking down a problem so you don't miss anything.
And the spies.
The intelligence community uses red teams. They explicitly assign people to attack their own conclusions. They basically assume they're bullshitting themselves, and their job is to prove it.
I love that. Analysis of competing hypotheses,
Yeah.
like institutionalized self-doubt.
It is, and it works. If you know a red team is going to come in and just tear your argument apart, you are going to be very, very careful with your facts before you present them.
Those are great tactics for the meeting room. But what about the bigger picture? The actual culture? The deep dive mentions structural redesign.
Right. This brings us to incentives. You get what you pay for. If you incentivize short-term stock bumps, you get financial engineering, which is really a high-level form of bullshit where you're just moving numbers around to look profitable without actually improving the business.
And the article mentions GE with this one.
Yeah. Under Larry Culp, GE had to pivot hard away from that financial wizardry and get back to operational fundamentals, making actual things that actually work. But Netflix is my favorite example here because they attack what's called information asymmetry.
That's where the boss knows things that the employees don't.
And Netflix just destroys that. They share almost everything, strategy docs, viewer numbers, financial data with every single employee. Their whole philosophy is freedom and responsibility.
So if you treat people like adults,
And give them the real data, they don't have to guess. And you can't lie to them.
it's pretty hard to bullshit a workforce that has access to the same dashboard you do.
Exactly.
There's also this point about financial resilience, which connects back to that fear we were talking about. The article uses Patagonia and Southwest Airlines as examples.
Yeah, insecurity breeds bullshit. If I am terrified that one bad quarter means I lose my job, I am going to lie about that quarter. I'm going to hide the losses.
So how do you break that cycle?
You build a safety net. Southwest has this legendary history of not laying people off during economic downturns. And that creates massive psychological safety. If I know my job is safe, even if the economy tanks, I can be honest about what isn't working. I don't have to fake it to survive.
Safety equals honesty. It's such a simple equation, but so few companies actually solve for it.
It requires a long-term view that most public companies really struggle with.
Speaking of the long game, let's talk about the mindset shift. From omniscience to learning. This is the Microsoft turnaround story.
It is. Satya Nadella, when he took over Microsoft, it was a very aggressive, very know-it-all culture. And he explicitly said, we need to move from being know-it-alls to learn-it-alls.
It sounds like a bumper sticker, but it actually changes the rules of engagement.
It changes everything. If the expectation is that I'm a learner, then saying, I don't know, isn't a failure. It's the first step of the process.
And leaders have to model that.
They have to. If the CEO stands up and says, I got this wrong, or I don't have the answer yet, it gives everyone else permission to drop the act.
And finally, we have to talk about Amazon and the 6-page memo, because this is one of the most tangible anti-bullshit mechanisms I've ever heard of.
Oh, it's brilliant in its cruelty. No PowerPoint, no slide decks.
Because slides are so easy to hide behind. You can put up 3 bullet points and a stock photo of a handshake and just talk your way through it.
You can charm the room, exactly. But at Amazon, you have to write a 6-page narrative, a memo, full sentences, coherent arguments. And the meeting starts with everyone sitting in silence for 20 minutes reading it.
The silence must be deafening.
But think about what it forces you to do. You cannot hand-wave in a written document. If your logic has a hole in it, it stares you in the face on page 3. It forces rigorous thinking. It strips away all the charisma and the performance and leaves just the ideas.
It raises the bar for truth. You can't just wing it on paper.
Yeah, really can't.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground here. From the definition of the bullshitter as someone who's just indifferent to truth, to the hidden tax on our brains, to these really specific tools like red teams and the 6-page memo.
It's a lot.
So if we zoom out, what's the real takeaway? Because, we aren't all Ray Dalio or Satya Nadella.
The takeaway is that bullshit is a structural problem, but it has personal solutions. You have to start by diagnosing your own environment. Use those dimensions we talked about. Truth, boss, language. Just look at your next meeting. Is evidence winning? Or is it the loudest voice?
And if it's the loudest voice?
Then you have to look at your own contribution. And this is the uncomfortable part. We've spent this whole time talking about them, the bosses, the system. But where are you? The bullshitter. Seriously.
Yeah.
Where are you using jargon to hide the fact that you haven't done the work? Where are you nodding along to a strategy you know is doomed because you just don't want to rock the boat?
That is the challenge.
It is. This place is full of it. Shouldn't be an accepted refrain. But you can't clean up the culture if you're contributing to the pollution. Honesty and evidence have to be daily practices. You have to be the one to say, I don't know, but let's find out. You have to be the one to say, hey, can we clarify what synergistic alignment actually means in this context?
Be the change, even if it makes the meeting awkward.
Especially if it makes the meeting awkward. That awkwardness is usually the sound of bullshit dying.
I love that. Well, consider it's all challenge. Let's try to keep it real this week. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.